In the annals of geopolitics, few conflicts have drawn as enduring and intense global scrutiny as the war in Ukraine. The latest development, spotlighted in a recent video featuring German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul, voices profound skepticism about a potential face-to-face meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. During Wadephul's inaugural visit to Asia, the German diplomat's assessment adds both urgency and realism to already highly charged diplomatic conversations. Standing in front of a backdrop marked by geopolitical tension, Wadephul expressed deep doubts that a direct encounter between Putin and Zelenskyy would materialize. His assessment captures a broader sentiment among Western leaders, that while dialogue is vital, it often runs headlong into the realities of entrenched positions, mistrust, and strategic brinkmanship. Despite international pressure for de-escalation, the likelihood of a meaningful, trust-building bilateral meeting remains slim. Wadephul's remarks came amid a flurry of diplomatic activity surrounding the fate of Ukraine. Just days earlier, in Tokyo, he called for intensified pressure on Russia, including increased military and humanitarian support for Ukraine, to drive Moscow toward a genuine and sustainable peace settlement. A summit in Washington featuring U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, attended by European leaders including Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz, marked a significant juncture in these efforts. It was here, it was reported, that Trump initiated arrangements for a possible meeting between Zelenskyy and Putin, even as the venue remains undetermined. The diplomatic theater has been pivotal, though not without controversy. Following his talks with Putin in Alaska, the U.S. President hosted Zelenskyy and European allies at the White House. The summit produced several notable outcomes: progress toward security guarantees for Ukraine, preparations for a trilateral meeting involving Putin, Zelenskyy, and Trump, and cautious optimism from European capitals. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer characterized the talks as good and constructive, highlighting a unified European stance and a potential path forward for peace. Yet, underlying tension persists. Trump publicly stated he was arranging a direct meeting between the Russian and Ukrainian leaders within the next 2 weeks, even as Zelenskyy voiced readiness for such an engagement, and Merz cautioned that security agreements, especially of the NATO style, must be negotiated carefully. In this diplomatic maelstrom, Wadephul's doubts serve as a sobering counterpoint, reminding observers that political theater often coexists with entrenched strategic postures. Further complicating the diplomatic landscape is Germany's multifaceted stance. On one hand, Chancellor Merz lauded the Washington talks for showing unity, yet he and other European leaders remain wary. Security guarantees are rightly seen as essential, but the question of territorial integrity looms large. Kyiv's remaining territory, leaders insist, must be included in any discussion, an insistence rooted in firm principles and practical stakes. Meanwhile, Wadephul's focus extended beyond Ukraine. From his position in Tokyo, he also issued sharp criticism of China's increasingly assertive posture in the Asia-Pacific, including its support for Russia's war efforts. China, he warned, continues to jeopardize international norms by supplying dual-use goods to Russia and threatening unilateral territorial shifts in regions like the Taiwan Strait and the South and East China Seas. Such actions, he cautioned, risk undermining global security architecture. These comments add a second layer to the geopolitical stakes, highlighting that regional instability in Asia has reverberations across Europe's Eastern Front. In essence, Wadephul's remarks articulate a broader diplomatic skepticism anchored in geopolitical reality. While the optics of summits and televised readiness for negotiation make headlines, the path toward a credible, enforceable peace agreement remains deeply uncertain. His caution is not mere pessimism, it reflects the complex interplay of negotiation, deterrence, and dispute over core issues such as territorial sovereignty and security guarantees. To unpack the layers further, a meeting between Putin and Zelenskyy, if it occurs, would be nothing short of historic. Yet, the absence of trust, ongoing conflict, and political theatrics risk reducing such an encounter to symbolic pageantry rather than a substantive step toward peace. Trump's tentative push for a trilateral meeting amplifies both the potential and the peril. It could open dialogue, but without firm ground rules, particularly guaranteeing Ukraine's security and territorial integrity, it may yield little progress, or worse, backfire. From Berlin, Merz and Wadephul paint slightly different portraits of Germany's involvement. Merz sees opportunity in unified European messaging, Wadephul injects caution, stressing that security must be ensured even beyond a ceasefire. Together, they embody a central tension of diplomacy in wartime. The desire to engage contrasts sharply with the imperative to protect, and not cede ground. Throughout these exchanges, Ukraine occupies a dual position, subject to the geopolitical currents and yet at the center of them. Zelensky's willingness to negotiate underscores leadership resolve. Though he is circumspect, he insists any future peace cannot come at the cost of Ukrainian sovereignty. This stance resonates with European leaders wary of concessions, and Trump's promise of involvement remains vague, contingent on follow-through that is as yet undefined. Wiedepul's Asia trip, then, casts the diplomatic game not in black and white terms, but in shades of strategic calculation. It underscores the interconnectedness of global hotspots, Europe's stability, Asia's rising tensions, and the critical importance of norms governing state conduct. His message is clear: dialogue alone won't suffice unless balanced by strength, guarantee, and unwavering principle. As the world looks toward Washington and the possibility of a Putin-Zelenskyy meeting, Wiedepul's words invite a tempered mindset. He reminds us that in diplomacy, the optics of progress can obscure the mechanics of peace. Unless geopolitical actors prioritize substance over symbolism, security over optics, and the sovereignty of nations over transient headlines, the path forward remains perilous. The challenge for international diplomacy is thus to transform potential into practice, crafting an agreement that ensures Ukraine's defense, affirms its territorial integrity, and emerges from a framework of enforceable commitments. That, or the absence of it, will determine whether a future meeting becomes a turning point, or merely another historical footnote. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments, shorter version, more emphasis on specific themes, or inclusion of additional analysis.